This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning. My name is Greg Wadley with CTC and Associates, and I'm the Clear Roads Administrator. We're here for the final webinar on the project entitled Recruitment and Retention of Highway Maintenance Workers. The research team from Western Transportation Institute at Montana State University is led by Laura Fay. Before I turn it over to Laura, I want to let everybody know that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the Clear Roads website at a later date for viewing at your convenience. We will also ask that everybody stays on mute today so that there's no background noise. However, if you have any questions or comments, please enter them into the chat box and we'll address them at the end of the presentation. So I think that's all we have for housekeeping items. So I'm going to turn it over to the research team, and it's all yours, Laura.
Great, thank you, Greg. Welcome, everyone. This is a final report webinar for the Recruitment and Retention of Highway Maintenance Workers project through Clear Roads, and I'm just going to jump right into it. So I'd like to quickly just acknowledge Clear Roads and Minnesota DOT for funding this effort and contracting it, and thank everyone on the Clear Roads TAC for their effort and support on this project. It required quite a bit of effort in the surveys and interviews, as well as their feedback. Thanks to Greg for his coordination between Clear Roads and our agency, and a huge thank you to the survey respondents and interviewees that helped provide the bulk of the content that's presented in this project. And I wanted to say a personal thank you to Neil for making the graphics and Dana and Carla for their help on this report. So just to introduce the research team, my name is Laura Fay. I work at the Western Transportation Institute, and I was the lead PI on this project with support from Susan Gallagher and Carolyn Klauser from WTI. We also had a tremendous amount of help on this project from Dave Bergner and Diana Claunch with adding their expertise to this effort. So this was a 6-task project, and it involved a literature review, extensive surveys. We sent out 4 and had many responses. We conducted follow-up interviews, and we used all of that to develop case studies and recommendations. And then all of that is summarized in a final report and presented in this final report webinar. The bulk of this webinar and the final report will actually be the case studies that were developed, as well as the recommendations. And just for everyone's knowledge, there are 2 key deliverables as a part of this project. There is a separate document that presents the case studies and recommendations. So it's a shorter document that's easier to work through. And then there's a final report that summarizes each task effort and contains all of the task deliverables. And these will be available on the Clear Roads website, listed below once they're posted. So let's get into the project. So the goal of this project was to identify recruitment and retention tools for highway maintenance workers. Recruitment of skilled employees can be a challenge at many transportation agencies. And as more winter maintenance personnel reach eligibility for retirement, many agencies have looked to creative recruitment programs to bring on skilled or skill-seeking employees. These programs include creative partnerships to hire disadvantaged populations and training of supplemental staff during critical events. Here we have a list of a few examples of these. For example, the program like Helmets to Hard Hats is a national program that works to connect National Guard, Reserve, and veteran populations with training and employment opportunities in the construction and maintenance industry. An example of the application of this is a partnership with Ohio DOT, where they've created a Helmets to Hard Hats apprenticeship program, which offers paid training and reimbursement and the ability for them to use ODOT equipment to obtain their CDL. Once they've worked through this apprenticeship program and received their CDL, they have the opportunity to apply for a full-time position. And again, as you'll see in this presentation and in the case studies report, there are many links to different outside organizations and resources. So please feel free to click on these and check out these resources. Another partnership that we identified that a few states are using is a partnership with the Department of Corrections. For example, this partnership in Michigan is called the Vocational Village. And the Vocational Village was a first of its kind skilled trades training program that aims to provide a positive learning community for prisoners who are serious about completing career and technical education. The Vocational Village has many different training opportunities, including plumbing, electrical work, tree trimming, and obtaining their CDL and forklift operation, just to name a few. There are many other options of what they can learn, and it's a classroom session as well as hands-on learning. And the goal is that once they're released, these former inmates have certificates that are nationally recognized that they can then use to support them as they go into the workforce. Another example of this is in the state of North Dakota. They do have a partnership with their Department of Corrections, but they had to do a little work on their end at the state level to make this feasible. So one thing they had to do initially was to remove the question on state applications if someone was a felon or had committed a felony. And this worked in two ways, in that it eliminated the folks that were honest and checked yes and then didn't get an interview. But for the folks that checked no, it removed that initial, I guess, discrepancy or lie on their application so that they had the ability to pursue a job. And then as they go through the application process, a background check would bring up any prior convictions and allow for a conversation about what happened and moving forward what their goals are. The program in North Dakota was initially driven by the desire for a lot of inmates to receive their CDL, and so that's really what they wanted. Oh, there's an echo on the line. If
right.
someone,
I'm going to try and take care of it right now. I think it's caller number 5. Give me 1 second. All right, you should be okay.
Okay, thanks, Greg. So North Dakota was really focused on getting the CDL program up and running. The city of Fisher, Indiana has employed the RISE program. Again, this is a partnership with the Department of Corrections, or Reentry Initiative through Structured Employment. And the goal of this is to recruit, assist, and equip the transitioning workforce to reestablish themselves as productive members of society. And this is a 1-year program that not only provides on-the-job experience, but it also helps provide life skills, so money management, emotional management, things like that. So it's not just a job skills training program. Another recruitment option that was highlighted by a few state DOTs that we discussed is the use of existing staff to create supplemental workforce. So this would be using maybe engineers or other office staff that traditionally wouldn't be a part of the maintenance crew, and train them and get them their CDL so that during heavy snow operations or maybe that 100-year storm event, when you do need additional staff, they could come on and help and support the organization. So another recruitment tool that was highlighted is sharing your story or using social media for recruitment and public engagement. Social media sites like Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter have provided a platform which allows an agency to reach out and interact with a wider audience and create a relationship with the public. Transportation agencies have used social media to share employee stories, provide real-time updates on maintenance and construction activities or road conditions, and share safety messaging. Social media has also been used to promote job opportunities. In particular, it's provided a method to humanize these state employees and provide input on ongoing activities. Best practices have told us that if you can best practices have told us that it can, by telling a story, you can most effectively portray what you do at your agency. And this can be easily done using social media. For example, here you can see Maine DOT, North Dakota, and Ohio all are sharing different parts of their organization or pieces of information on their social media platforms. We do link to quite a few states that have social media policies, as well as some general, I think, state and federal level guidelines or recommendations for social media policies. And these discuss, who is allowed to post, what kind of content is postable, whether you should have comments on or off, things like that. Other information that was recommended was to have a communication coordinator or a social media coordinator to kind of serve as the liaison to kind of control the social media accounts. Some additional examples of how this applies to this project are, for example, what Maine DOT has done. They've created a flyer that they can email out, print, or post to social media for their job recruitment. And this flyer was made specifically to focus on the benefits of working for Maine DOT. While salary is listed, it's really about what you can gain and other non-paid benefits that you get from working with the organization. North Dakota DOT used their social media in a little bit of a different way this last winter. They had a huge storm event, a multi-day event, and they were getting some pressure from the community to open up the roads quicker. So they posted some photos of what the road conditions actually were and some plows on the road. And they said, if you wanted to see the road open sooner, come work for us. So that they were, flipping the script and kind of using it as a recruitment tool. And this ended up getting picked up by the local media and actually got carried pretty far. And they got a lot of positive press out of it. And then the city of Dubuque has made kind of a Transformation Tuesday where they post every Tuesday on a project before and after photos to show folks kind of what they're doing as an organization, where they're working, and what improvements have been made. So there's a lot of opportunity with social media to kind of share what your organization is doing. Now we're going to jump into successful retention strategies. This was a large part of the project. Agencies invest time, money, and resources into each worker, and for this reason, turnover is costly to an agency. Employee turnover can result in loss of knowledge in the workforce and often becomes an issue during critical times such as large winter storm events. Unfortunately, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution to retention challenges faced by the transportation industry. Instead, a variety of methods have been utilized, including creation of career pathways into industry, employee training programs, mentorships, and methods to promote the benefits of entering the transportation workforce. One of these is creating a positive workplace culture. And so this is really aligning the values that you've set forth by your agency from the top to the bottom and the bottom to the top, and reinforcing these at every level. I think, as we all know, it just takes one kind of curmudgeon or bad person, and they can kind of spread that and make people unhappy. And so it's really important to understand your organization's values and help promote those. Another opportunity for retention is looking at your employee benefits and incentives programs. Many agencies have offered their employees competitive benefit programs or other incentives. For some agencies, a starting lower base pay compared to the private sector has been noted to be a recruitment issue. But what we found in some of the interviews with the private sector was that this is not necessarily the case. And so there may be a lot of opportunity for promotion of benefits when you have a public sector job to really kind of boost how that job is perceived. An example of some benefits offered by Ohio DOT are gear and tool allowances or tuition reimbursement for classes or trainings that could help promote that person in the workplace. One thing that Ohio DOT does do is for all new hires, they produce an annual certification or a list of benefits. This not only shows the individual coming into the organization what benefits they are, but what the value of these benefits are. And they also provide this to existing employees to remind them, these are benefits that are available to you. Please take advantage of them. Other incentives by other organizations include what Maine DOT offers. they recently instituted a winter maintenance incentive. And so for every week a plow driver is available on call to be called in for the winter, they can receive a $100 bonus per week, even if they don't get called in. So this is a huge kind of cash bonus that they could receive just by being available for the whole winter season. They also offer to pay for the cost of CDL for staff that come in, phone and gear allowance, and they make it a concerted effort to have an annual cost of living increase to match the conditions and prices in their area. Another opportunity for retention is promotion and leadership programs. Many agencies have created career progression and leadership programs to help retain employees, reward and support career development, and create consistent knowledge base and skill sets across agencies. These career progression and leadership programs often go hand in hand with employee training programs, where an employee is usually required to complete a specific set of trainings prior to moving up the career progression ladder. Each step along the ladder results in a pay increase for the employee, incentivizing them to continue to learn and gain knowledge, which is useful on the job. While creating a consistent set of steps for employees, these programs allow the employees to control their own destiny within an organization, creating a system that rewards the more motivated employees. Some examples of these career progression ladders that we identified include the ones in Idaho, Ohio, and Maine. Idaho created the Horizontal Career Pathways program. So they have 4 different pathways. The TTO program is directed specifically for maintenance and plow operators. But they do have programs for foremen, design and construction, and engineers as well. The program initially was created as a way to take kind of low starting pay and help bump people up and provide raises as they work through these classes and training programs and go through the TTO series. And the other examples are Ohio DOT. Ohio started the Highway Technician or HT program, and it has multiple stages in which employees can complete the courses and obtain certificates as they progress. What Ohio has found is that when folks are in the HT program, it's beneficial at retaining good quality employees. And the program has really helped employees to create their own destiny and make them feel like they're in control of their destiny within the organization, and has allowed for quite a few people to quickly move up into crew leadership positions. Maine DOT similarly has 3 different programs with all new hires starting in the Transportation Worker 1 through 3 series. After that, they can then apply for other jobs like the Transportation Leader and be in that series, or Transportation Supervisor. And again, there's detailed information in the case studies section of the report on all of these different programs. Another retention opportunity is using employee training programs. Employee training programs ensure that employees retain the knowledge and skills required to complete their jobs. Employee training programs often go hand in hand with promotion and leadership programs, where an employee is typically required to complete a number of trainings prior to moving up the career progression ladder we were just talking about. Other training opportunities include those offered by, for example, the Front Range Community College out of Colorado. They offer an Associates of Applied Science in Highway Maintenance. This is a 2 to 4 year program, depending on the amount of time available for the folks to work through it. It is offered through the Colorado Community College, but you don't need to be a Colorado resident or be in Colorado to be a part of the program. Currently, they have quite a few participants that are from out of state. So this is a great opportunity to folks that have been in maintenance for a little while and are ready to kind of look at going into management. They just have their first candidates start graduating, I believe, after the semester, so it's pretty exciting. There's a ton of information in the case studies and on the web if this is something that appeals to you to share with your staff. Colorado DOT also shared with us that they have a few training options that work really well for them. They have their traditional training academy that they do every year at the beginning of the winter season. But on top of that, they have their core training programs. They have their new hire program, their winter maintenance operations training, their traffic control supervisor training, and their heavy equipment operator training. And these are 4 separate training tracks that they revise and reevaluate every year based on maintenance district supervisor feedback on, what information are they lacking, what have they got a good handle on, or do they need, for example, training on new equipment. So that revision of the training frequently is really what they really appreciate. Another example of using training for employees is what ITD does. Idaho recently hired 2 training staff instead of outsourcing their training. They determined for them it was going to be more cost effective, partly because of the remote nature of parts of the state and the shape of it, with some of the travel times being pretty long. But ultimately what they were able to do is they were able to send these trainers out to the districts. And this alone created a lot of savings for them. By going out to the districts and doing the trainings on site, they were able to tailor the training specifically to the equipment that they had on site and the needs of each location. And what they found was that the flexibility of having in-house trainers significantly improved their program. Another training opportunity that was identified is the Green Dot program. It's designed to reduce harassment on construction job sites and is representative of a growing number of programs aimed at improving workplace climate for women and minorities in highway construction and other trades jobs where they are significantly underrepresented. This training program provides workers with strategies to intervene, to address harassment on the job, and to address job site culture issues. You can see that there's a link here and it sends you to a report summarizing the program as well as content on the website itself. Another retention tool is succession planning and mentoring. With an increasing number of employees eligible or near retirement, there are concerns about losing highly knowledgeable employees. Transportation agencies have adopted succession planning in order to reduce this loss of knowledge in the agency and prepare the next generation of highway maintenance workers and managers. Succession programs can include both formal and informal pathways for employees to move into leadership positions or mentorship programs, which allow senior employees or mentors to pass along knowledge and experience to other employees, mentees. Here are some examples of what some state DOTs are doing. In Ohio, they have 2 kind of mentorship / succession programs, the MAP Management Apprenticeship Program and the BOSS program, which I like the name of that one, Becoming a Supervisor Someday. And one example that of these programs that resonated with me is once they're in the program and they've worked through it a little bit, if a supervisor goes on vacation or is off for a day, they'll put someone from one of these programs in charge to show them and let them experience what it's like to be a supervisor for the day. And it gives people the opportunity to decide, yes, I do like this, or maybe this isn't for me. But regardless, it's a great opportunity. North Dakota DOT has the Leadership Development Journey program, which allows employees to gain and improve upon job competencies through training opportunities, cross-training, informal interviews with other staff members, job shadowing, mentorship, and workshops, just to name part of the program. And then another opportunity through the Oregon DOT, they've partnered with an outside organization, the Bureau of Labor and Industries, and they've established kind of an apprenticeship mentorship program with this organization. And this program allows for informal mentorship with these apprentices and a point of contact. So this person would serve to kind of help them with very basic stuff that maybe they didn't learn when they either first came onto the job or prior to the job, such as the importance of good gear, how spending a little extra money on a really good pair of boots is going to last you probably 3 seasons, maybe more, Whereas if you buy the cheap pair of boots, you're probably going to have to buy a couple pairs throughout that first season. So really kind of basic entry-level information, and it provides an opportunity for these people to have a conversation with somebody outside of the organization, ask questions, vet what's going on. So this has been a successful tool in Oregon. One of the case studies that was developed by Diana and Susan is underserved communities recruitment and retention, and how this can benefit the transportation industry. When discussing innovative but practical ways for DOTs to recruit and retain highly proficient, productive, versatile, and committed roadway maintenance workers, it's imperative that we focus and be inclusive of all candidates available that can contribute to the workforce. It was highlighted that not that many women are in the transportation workforce, and a recent study identified that there's still a pay gap between men and women. There's a lack of advancement of women into upper management positions. Women have a higher risk of injury. There's still discrimination going on in the workplace. There's an exclusion of women in kind of groups at the workplace. And there's a lack of visible role models for women in the workplace as well. So we know all this. How do we move forward? Well, there's a couple organizations that have been identified that you can look to for information and support on how to kind of move beyond this. So the North American Building Trades Union has a committee of women in trades, and they've organized a conference called Trades Women Build Nations, and they've also developed a diversity toolkit. This is a great resource for you and your organization to look at as you expand your workforce by incorporating more women into all positions at your agency. Another opportunity is to work with the National Association of Minority Contractors. They have an annual conference that's 50 years strong, and they have a goal of advocating for diversity, inclusion, and contracting opportunities in the multimodal, multi-billion-dollar transportation industry. What they really want to do is advocate, collaborate, educate, communicate, and innovate for all minorities in this sector. Another opportunity is to look to the recent Federal Highways publication, which is Identify, Train, and Place, or a playbook to build tomorrow's highway construction workforce. And while this document doesn't specifically target women or minorities in the workplace, it's a very inclusive document and can be used kind of on all levels to help support your agency in bringing underserved communities into your workforce. While this case study, this is just a smattering of a few things that are included in it, another opportunity to look for guidance is in the women-affiliated transportation organization called Women in Transportation. And again, the goal is to just attract, sustain, and connect and advance women in the transportation industry. So there are specific groups that are working that can help support us in this transportation sector to bring women and minorities into these positions. So a lot of it might just be connecting with these organizations and let them know we want to work together. We want to make this happen so we can expand our workforce. There was also a case study developed on recruitment and retention of the next generation. And this was based on an extensive study done on millennials in the workplace. Interestingly, the transportation sector was identified as a key area for millennials to seek good quality jobs. It was appealing to millennials because of the job security and the opportunities for personal and professional development. Some appealing aspects of the transportation, field were the online presence that already existed and the use of social media in the job. They were also excited. There's fairly good partnerships between colleges and different transportation groups. And what spoke a lot to the millennial generation were the opportunity for internships and mentorships. One thing to keep in mind is that millennials are a highly mobile workforce. You know, traditionally folks come into a job and they spend their entire career there. So 20, 30, 40 years in a workplace. Not so much with the millennials. They're looking to spend 3 to 5 years. And this is maybe challenging, but it's also an opportunity. Instead of grumbling about it, as you are looking at maybe designing your transportation worker series or your ladders of progression, maybe design them so that they can align with the values of the younger generation. Maybe have a total of a 3-year program, at which point they can either cross-train and maybe work in construction for a while or move up to a new position. So it doesn't have to be viewed negatively. It just has to be understood that this will likely occur. Some positives that can be worked on in the organization include just overall engagement with millennials and involvement and recognition of their effort. So you're having a meeting, just invite them to be at the table. Encourage them to become a part of the discussion. And when they bring a great new idea to the table, let them know they did a good job. Some challenges that millennials identified that they face are unrealistic expectations, especially in new jobs. In the past, you come on, let's say, straight out of high school or straight out of college, and it's expected that it will take you a while to ramp up and really get trained into that job. A lot of folks are now expecting people to hit the ground running, and it's kind of an unfair expectation. Another challenge that was identified is just bureaucratic delays. And I think any large company or organization is going to have these. So it's maybe teaching them and mentoring folks how to manage working through the minutia of the bureaucratic world. Another retention opportunity at agencies is capturing information to improve your program. Capturing information about staff, their needs, and job satisfaction can be as simple as asking and checking in with them periodically, to more formal meetings and surveys and focus groups. These programs work to improve retention of employees by applying feedback to improve the programs and lead overall to employee satisfaction. Additionally, programs like mentorships can provide an avenue for succession planning. The key to these programs is to be transparent with the benefits and how the information captured will be utilized, and be prepared to address feedback from employees. An example that we found from one of the mentorship programs from Ohio DOT was as they enter this, either the formal or informal mentorship program, they get a 1-page form to fill out, and it's titled, How I Want to Be Coached and Mentored. And it asks very basic questions. What do you like? What do you dislike? What are some traits about you that encourage learning or discourage? What works for you or doesn't? For example, some people do well with kind of the drill sergeant style mentor or boss, and some don't. And so that would be a really important piece of information to know at the start of a relationship of how is this person going to best receive information from me? That questionnaire is actually posted in the case studies, as well as some other examples of how to capture information. These other capture or information capture tools include informal check-ins. It can be as simple as, how did the week go? How did the storm go? Did the equipment work? What are your gripes about it? What are some simple fixes? To more formal surveys, for example, Ohio, Idaho, North Dakota, they shared us examples with us of employee satisfaction surveys they do. And these are more formal agency-wide surveys that are sent out. Another example that we identified was using focus groups. So this would be a sit down at a table with a group and discuss how are things going, what's your feedback. And last but not least, there's also the opportunity to capture information in exit interviews. Unfortunately, usually when people are leaving, it's a little too late, but you can still learn why they're leaving. Some feedback we got in the interview process was that sometimes exit interviews are the first time you hear that someone was even unhappy in the job. So this would be an opportunity to say, do more check-ins with staff and identify what the issues are before they become a problem and lead folks to wanting to leave your organization. Some kind of best practices with exit interviews that were identified by agencies were to have HR or a third party do the exit interviews. If someone's leaving because of their maintenance manager and their manager is doing the exit interview, they're probably not going to be completely honest about why they're leaving or provide constructive feedback to that person. Another option would be to do like an online survey exit interview so they can feel anonymous and they can fully be honest about why they're leaving the organization. But what's most critical with all of these information capturing concepts is to ask questions, honestly and openly listen to the responses, and then follow up with answers or suggestions. It's not just enough to capture the information, you then need to do something with it. So the next piece of this project was making kind of recommendations on how agencies can improve recruitment and retention. A lot of these are tied back to the case studies that were developed, and I'll go over these now. So developing a long-term recruitment program. Agencies should expect to implement long-term recruitment and retention strategies. This sentiment was echoed by DOT HR departments, where recruitment and retention are a key part of their jobs, and they strive to find new and innovative ways to bring in new employees. These efforts require long-term commitment and that an agency be willing to adapt to the job market changes and workforce needs. So this is a great opportunity for you to reach out and work directly with your HR department and let them know what you need and what you're looking for, and let them kind of work their magic. Succession planning improves knowledge transfer and ensures that the next generation of leaders are prepared to enter their positions in the workforce. Mentorship programs can be extremely beneficial in providing a method for more senior staff to pass down their years of knowledge and skills to younger staff, while allowing for a process where newer employees can receive feedback in a more informal manner and more regularly. Career pipelines. So this is discussed more in the document itself than in this presentation, but it's essentially the concept of reaching people before they get into the workforce. So this would be doing outreach at high schools or community colleges, where maybe you go to a career fair, maybe you set up a touch a plow or a ride along program for students. Especially if they're in, for example, like a CDL program or a trades program at a community college. I know at our high school where I live, the kids can take a welding program. So that would be a great opportunity to reach out to those classes and reach those students. But you can go to even younger groups. There are DOTs like in North Dakota, and I believe Ohio as well, where they do touch a plow at like state fairs, or the plows will be in parades, or they'll have a classroom paint a plow. And these are all opportunities for visualization, for allowing people to see themselves in that position, in that job, and to see what it entails. We had quite a discussion on employee training programs. And just to reiterate the importance of effective training, but also utilizing training to create growth and reinforce the base knowledge that you'd like to see at your organization. And part of that is creating these career progression or career ladders within your agencies. These are an opportunity not only to use that training, but also to create job descriptions and classifications that reflect the changing duties and responsibilities and skills required in maintenance these days. As a part of this, it allows you to also modify hourly pay rates based on this increased knowledge and experience. So it's a tool that can be used on many fronts, not only for training, but for career growth and pay increases, and as a retention tool. So utilizing technology and innovation. So we discussed social media quite a bit and the use of that, which is a great tool. But another component of this is when you go to career fairs or you go to high schools or when you're out in public, utilizing your technology to kind of create an interesting conversation. For example, the HR department in North Dakota, they let us know that when they go to college career fairs, they bring their drones and their non-invasive sensors. And they want these students to know that if they are interested, they could potentially get their drone license and they could fly drones for the DOT, or they could be, mechanical engineer and they could be working on non-invasive sensor networks that they use within their organization. So this technology that you guys use on a daily basis could be a recruitment tool. So another recommendation is overall improving diversity by casting a wider net. So the roadway maintenance workforces are predominantly white male, and agencies have an opportunity to recruit more women and a more diverse workforce. Other groups for targeted recruitment efforts include minorities, military veterans, and second chance candidates, such as the examples of partnering with the Department of Corrections. These may be people that are just looking for a career change as well, or post-retirement. So DOTs are offering many internal programs targeting underserved populations. These can be found across the country, but really it's focusing on marketing, social media, and outreach that's showing women and minorities and other disadvantaged populations on the job, in the job, and growing in your organization. And allowing yourself to learn from your employees by improving communication among staff and managers through methods like job satisfaction surveys, informal check-ins, and exit interviews. Capturing this information can allow your agency to identify issues and create countermeasures and solutions before they become a problem and you have retention issues. So this is something that you can do within your organization. So this entire project occurred basically with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, and it really highlighted the importance and the challenges of this project. So there's a whole section in the recommendations and case studies on how the COVID pandemic really impacted recruitment and retention of highway maintenance workers. I think we can all remember back about a year ago when we were in quarantine, and even though maintenance staff were deemed essential and on the job, there were issues associated with that, but there were also layoffs or, folks required to work from home. And now a year later, we're in this position of recalling people back and the challenges of getting people back into the office to fill their seats. Some DOTs are dealing with hiring freezes or holds on jobs due to economic impacts, and that is only going to further exacerbate any recruitment or retention issues at the agencies. On top of that, there's this challenge of not only creating a safe workplace emotionally and physically, but now a safe workplace with this new virus. So while social distancing is frequently not being needed to be observed anymore, there is still potential that we might have to move into that depending on the way things go. A lot of agencies and organizations are dealing with how to manage vaccines. Are they required? Are they not? Are you even allowed to ask? And how your agency deals with that with new hires and existing staff is going to be a challenge, as well as quarantines. Early on, quarantines were 7 to 14 days, and that presented a huge challenge. And how do you notify staff if they've been exposed? These are going to be ongoing challenges that I think we have a little bit of experience under our belt, but it's not going to go away initially. So it's something to keep in mind that there's a whole new layer of recruitment and retention challenges just brought on by the pandemic. So the final piece of this within the recommendations, early on we noted there's not one piece of information that's going to solve all of your recruitment and retention issues. There's likely going to be many things that you do as an organization that help to solve these problems. So we wanted to provide a flowchart tool just to encourage, you have an idea, let's let it grow and see what happens. So start with listen, learn, and watch. Was there a nugget that you got out of this webinar or the report? Great. Identify that nugget. Talk to the person who tried it. How did it work? What worked for them? and identify whether or not that's reasonable for your agency or if it needs to be modified. Set a goal. We'd like to implement more social media posting for recruitment. Great goal. Okay, start small. Work with your HR department or whoever your communication coordinator is, or maybe that's your goal, get a communication coordinator, and start posting about positions. Go through the plan, work through it, make it happen, and then actually look at the metrics. Who's looking at the site? How many people? How many applicants did you get directly tied to that posting? Is it working? What's working? What's not? Reevaluate. Is this worth the effort? Should we try something different? And keep going. I think, it's important to set a small, reasonable goal to start with and then build from there. You can always add on more later. There's no need to go big with this first try at something. So with that, that's a summary of the effort that we put together. I'll now open the floor for questions.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, so the first question was posed by Cliff Spoonmore. And Cliff, I'm going to ask you to come off mute for a moment and ask the question of Laura, because I think it might work out better that way.
That question was a long time ago. She was really into that. We always have that idea that I've been here for 15 years, I'm next in line. And I was just wondering sometimes, how do we change that concept in the maintenance force that, hey, we're going to hire the best quality person rather for the supervisor's job rather than the person who's been here the longest? Was any of that covered in any of those case studies?
It's not covered much in the report. I believe, is it Mike Kofi from Alaska, gave a really good talk on that at APWA about kind of a shift in culture and how we as agencies need to kind of think how we traditionally have done things, which was more military style, versus shifting to addressing this management leadership style to the changing workforce. So in the context of the changing workforce and bringing in younger millennial style staff, there is some conversation about that, but specifically addressing that issue, we don't have much information in the report, other than just, agency-wide, everyone needs to kind of change and evolve. So hopefully some of that would speak to that. Diana, Dave, Susan, and Carolyn, feel free to help provide any answers if you guys have any additional feedback.
So Brian Byrne, I don't know if, oh, go ahead.
This is Dave Bergner, and I've been studying workforce issues in the transportation field here for a number of years, plus my own experiences. And there'll be, of course, a generational shift, which will mean a cultural shift as well in many organizations. And I think that particularly in those agencies that have been dominated with unions, a lot of work has to be done with the unions as well as with the organization's civil service rules to, get away from this concept or long-time tradition that you just serve so much time and then you'll automatically get a promotion. I think with how things will be changing and have been changing here in recent years, that you'll see a shift away from that, well, I've paid my dues, where's my promotion kind of thing, to looking ahead. And as Laura pointed out earlier in the presentation about preparing people to step up, a lot more emphasis needs to be done as to informing employees, what you really need to do, what you need to acquire in order to qualify for promotion. particularly when it comes to supervisory or managerial roles.
You know, Dave, thanks for adding that. And just to kind of build off that, you know, one of the challenges with this project, we really were hoping to get data from HR departments on the success of the career ladder programs and the, you know, management training and mentorship programs. And unfortunately, a lot of internal tracking of that was not done. And so one way to kind of help, I think, each agency is to just track the success, the lessons learned, you know, how many staff have gone through the program that actually progressed through, just to figure out, you know, how successful, even if your agency has those programs are, or if you're starting a new one, start collecting the data out of the gates.
All right. Scott Lucas from Ohio had responded to Cliff on the chat box saying a big portion of changing the attitude in an agency with a union involves union buy-in. So I think we heard a little bit about that from Dave Bergner as well. Cliff had another question. He said, who should be the person to do the check-ins? Sometimes the immediate boss thinks everything is okay.
No, that's a great question. I can give you my answer as a supervisor. You know, I try to check in with my own staff weekly or monthly. That's just what I do personally. Some great check-in questions were received from actually a private sector maintenance company. And actually the owner of the company does the check-ins directly with the staff. And he felt that it was really important for someone kind of fairly high up to sit down, have a simple conversation, listen to what's going on and what these folks' needs are. So I think for each organization, it's going to be, you know, whoever you feel can best be open to hearing and receiving feedback. So that might be the shift manager, that might be the shop manager, that might be the district. You know, that's something for you guys to work on as an organization and determine that. And it, you know, you may not always get the right person asking the questions, or they might not be asking them the right way. So it's a process.
Okay. Scott Lucas from Ohio asks, does the report contain points of contact with the DOTs of with the DOTs of who to speak with about your solutions?
So we did not list contacts within this report. You can go to the final report, and we do list the names of the interviewees, so you can track them down that way. But for most of, or a lot of the information, if it's not directly linked to an outside organization, I would actually start with the HR departments. They were so helpful and so willing and open about sharing information about what they're doing. So that's a great starting point. For some of this information, we just reached out directly to Clear Roads members to make contact. So not to put extra pressure on you guys, but that seemed to work really well as well.
Cliff had another entrance into the chat box, and he says, women in the workplace. Do we have a number of women that want to enter this section of the transportation industry, such as 1 in 10?
That's a good question. Diana, if you're on the line and you have a recollection of that, go for it. Otherwise, I'll try and take it.
Hi, yes, I am on the line. And while I don't have a number of how many want to enter the workplace, the number that's there is very, very small. And I'm thinking construction across the board was less than 5%, you know, of the women, or less than 5% of the employees in the construction field were women. We see a little bit of higher number in management through Public Works, and that information comes to us from the American Public Works Association. But still, it's a very, very small percentage. And I'm glad, Cliff, that you asked this question, because the one thing that I wanted to add to this conversation, and Laura, you did a great job with the presentation, thank you very much. One thing I wanted to add that I took away from all this work that we did was I noted that when they were in some of this the research, when they were asking folks why did they stay in these positions that were difficult, where they didn't fit in, where they were excluded, where they had all the issues that we talked about earlier, the consensus was that they stayed in these positions because, number one, they had a support system. So somebody or some bodies was supporting them in what they were doing in their endeavor. And number two, they had good mentorship. So I think we can take that away, and that can have a very strong impact that once we do recruit folks into these positions and being able to retain them.
Thanks, Diana. That's great.
All right, getting back to the union thing, Joe Bucci from Rhode Island, which is a union state, says getting union buy-in would require a change in their signed CBAs, eliminating the seniority clauses contained therein as it relates to promotional opportunities, and that is a very heavy lift. Joe, I don't know if you want to come off mute and say anything else about that.
Yeah, I've dealt with with the seniority clauses on a lot of different things, and I forgot who it was that initially brought it up, but I think it was Cliff that said that there's that mindset, it's old school, that I've been here the longest, I have a lot of years in, I deserve to be next. And those are not always the people that fit into the cultural changes that you need to make. That old school mentality doesn't keep people working. It doesn't attract people in. So, I like to use the mindset where, just like we do on the team, the best players play. So whoever's next up, that doesn't fly here, but it's a lot of butting heads with the union, and you don't always win. And that seniority clauses that's something that they don't want to give up.
Okay, we have one final comment, and that's from Brian Byrne in Maine. It says, our Transportation Workers Series allows individuals to promote once they have met training requirements and passed a hurdle test. It does not limit another person's ability to promote. In other words, we don't have a set number of TW1s, 2s, and 3s. We would gladly have an entire workforce of TW3s. It was a union-supported effort. So, Brian, I don't know if you want to come off mute and say anything more about that.
Yeah, sure. Basically, I just wanted to clarify that we have not gotten rid of the seniority. We still deal with considering seniority and hiring. But one of the things that sort of like a training or qualifications based worker series, like the transportation workers that we have. One of the things it adds is you don't have to wait for someone to either retire, quit, or die to create a vacancy further up in the crew. It just sets the requirements for training, and then once they pass those tests, people can move up. So you're not taking away an opportunity from a more senior person, but if the more senior person does not take the training and does not make the effort to take the hurdle tests, they certainly won't promote until they do those things. So there's a little bit of a difference, I guess, but certainly when there's a vacated position and we're hiring that position, we still have to look at seniority, and seniority still trumps on transfers and things like that.
Gotcha. Thank you. Joe Bucci, let's see. I've seen some other ones jump in here too. Okay, so Bucci says, one last question. How many pay steps within each highway maintenance worker classification do other states have? We have only 4. And I'm seeing some replies here. Scott Lucas says, I believe they have 5 HT steps in Ohio. New Hampshire has 9. Maine has 8, Idaho has 3. I don't know if any of the research team wants to comment on that.
Yeah, so in the case study example for this, the different transportation workers, like progression ladders, we do have a few examples of what those look like. I know one of them is from Ohio. And so it shows the training required, the test, the title, and then the pay difference for each step. So folks can see what another agency is doing.
Yeah, the reason I asked that question is because with 4, there's a 6-month probation period. So they start out at whatever the initial step is. 6-month probation. If they pass, they get that, they go to the next step. That's the second. And then it's annually after that. So in 2 years and 6 months, they're at the top step. And then if there's no, like what Brian said, I've also tried to do that here, where it's incentivized if they want to move up. There's no limit to the next level, is what Brian's saying. And I've tried to get that here, but we're limited with positions in each of those worker categories. For us, we call them highway maintenance workers. We have 1s and 2s, and you cannot become a 2 without someone leaving a 2. I like the idea of being able to incentivize it, and if you pass or you take the trainings and pass certifications or whatever, then you're able to move up. I think that would be a big incentive for people to stay. So, essentially in one district garage, if you have 20 people, they could all be the 2 classification, as opposed to X number of 1s, X number of 2s, X number of 3s, and so on.
Okay. Let's see. So there was a couple others, I think, that jumped in here. We had Connecticut had 4, Kansas had 4, Vermont has 6. Todd from Vermont also said, we are like Maine DOT as we can promote based on abilities and additional responsibilities, etc. No limitations on each classification. Okay, so I think that conversation could go on for a while here, but and I don't know if anybody else is going to jump in, but that could be a conversation that perhaps happens offline, if any want to go any deeper into it, I guess. But I believe we have we've exceeded our hour. So with that, I think we're going to thank the research team. Laura, I really appreciate your time and work on this, and with you and your team. And just want to thank everybody for participating today, and hope everyone has a great rest of your week.